Far to the east, beyond the lands men knew, rose the mightiest city the world would ever see, Valyria. Its colossal black stone towers pierced the heavens, taller than any cathedral or castle. Beneath them, rivers of molten lava glowed, winding through the streets like veins of living fire. At sunset, golden light danced upon the volcanic cliffs, and the whole city seemed to burn with its own inner flame. To those who gazed upon it, Valyria was not a city, but a living miracle, born of fire, sustained by sorcery, and destined, or so they believed, to last forever. Every brick, every wall, every shadow declared its dominion. This was not merely the heart of an empire, it was the heart of the world. Above this city of flame, shadows moved against the sun, shadows with wings vast enough to darken the land below. Dragons soared freely, their roars shaking the mountains, their fiery breath splitting the skies. These were not creatures of myth, but the living embodiment of Valyria's strength. To see them was to know awe and terror in equal measure. Farmers in the fields would stop their work, merchants would pause their trade, and soldiers would stand frozen, for to hear a dragon's cry was to hear the promise of death and glory. It was said that no army could withstand them, no fortress could repel them, and no king could defy them. Dragons were not beasts of burden, they were power incarnate. And in their wings lay the destiny of Valyria. The people of Valyria thrived in the shadow of dragons. Silver-haired and violet-eyed, the noble families were marked by the blood of old magic. They walked the streets in flowing robes adorned with fire-born sigils, their every step a declaration of pride. Markets overflowed with goods from across the known world, spices from Et, gems from Sithorios, silks from As-High. Craftsmen forged wonders never seen elsewhere, blending artistry with enchantment. Yet beneath this splendor, all lived under the silent truth, their fate was bound to the dragons. Common folk served, feared, and worshipped their dragon lords, for it was fire and blood that held their world together. To live in Valyria was to live at the center of greatness, but also at the mercy of flame. Above all stood the dragon lords, the ruling families who commanded both men and beasts. Clad in black and crimson armor, often wrought in the image of dragons, they strode through their city like living gods. Each lord was bonded to a dragon, and through that bond came a power beyond mortal reckoning. A single dragon rider, it was said, was worth 1,000 knights in battle. They were conquerors and rulers, feared and revered across the known world. When they rode into war, fire followed. When they raised their banners, kingdoms bent the knee. The dragon lords were more than men, they were symbols of Valyria's unending dominion. To look upon them was to see destiny shaped in flesh and flame. In the great forges of Valyria, fueled by dragon flame itself, craftsmen wrought weapons unmatched by any other. Valyrian steel, lighter than common steel, yet stronger than any substance known to man, and sharper than the keenest edge. Swords of this metal gleamed darkly, rippled like flowing water, and never dulled. Each was more than a weapon, it was an heirloom, a relic, bound with spells and tempered in sorcery. Such blades could cut through armor as if it were cloth, and endure for generations without rust. Kings across the world coveted them, yet only Valyrians knew their secrets. To carry a Valyrian blade was to carry a piece of eternity, a shard of the Empire's might. Power in Valyria lay not only in its fire and steel, but in its knowledge. Beneath towering black stone arches, vast libraries housed scrolls and tomes gathered from every corner of the world. Within their shelves were maps of distant lands, records of forgotten histories, and grimoires of fire magic older than memory. Scholars whispered of spells that could call storms, shatter mountains, or bend men's minds. It was said the wisdom of Valyria could raise an empire, or doom it. Few were permitted within these halls, for the knowledge contained there was dangerous, even to those who wielded it. Yet it was this marriage of fire and wisdom that set Valyria apart, a civilization bound not only by dragons, but by secrets that no other people dared to seek. When night fell upon Valyria, the city glowed as though the sun itself dwelled within its walls. Lava rivers lit the streets in crimson light, while the black towers blazed with lanterns of crystal and fire. Dragons wheeled beneath the moon, their shadows rippling across the molten landscape. Music and voices echoed from the plazas, for the city never truly slept. To stand upon the cliffs at night was to witness a vision beyond mortal comprehension, a city alive with fire, a people unafraid of darkness, and a power that seemed eternal. Valyria by night was both beautiful and terrible, a dream and a warning. To behold it was to believe it could never fall. For centuries, no power dared stand against the freehold. Its armies marched across continents, its sorcerers bent fire to their will, and its dragonlords conquered with ease. Kingdoms rose and fell before them, their crowns melted into the treasury of Valyria. The freehold was not a kingdom, nor an empire, it was something greater, a dominion of fire and blood that stretched beyond imagination. To resist was folly, to defy was death. And so the world accepted a single truth, whispered in awe and fear alike: Valyria was eternal. But in the heart of fire lies the seed of ruin. And even the greatest flame, no matter how bright, must one day flicker and die. Within the mighty freehold of Valyria, 40 families held dragons. They were the dragon lords, the silver-haired rulers of fire and blood. Among them, the Targaryens were neither the greatest nor the weakest, but they were different. While other families reveled in excess, vying for power at the empire's heart, the Targaryens lived on the fringes, far from the rivalries that consumed their kin. Though their dragons were fewer, their resolve was strong, their blood just as old, their eyes just as bright with fire. Some whispered that the Targaryens were outliers, too cautious, too distant to shape Valyria's destiny. Yet in their separation lay survival, for when the flames of doom came, it was their distance from the heart of empire that spared them. Fate had chosen them for something greater than even they could imagine. In Valyria, the skies belonged to dragons. In the great arenas, dragon lords displayed their beasts before roaring crowds. Fire and smoke filled the air as riders bent their dragons to will, demonstrating mastery over creatures that embodied living flame. These contests were not mere spectacles, they were assertions of power, proof that the freehold's strength rested not in swords or shields, but in fire and wings. Among these rulers, the Targaryens remained quieter, less ostentatious. Their dragons were no less fierce, their bond no less true, but their presence felt apart, set against the tide of arrogance that consumed their peers. In the brilliance of the freehold, few noticed their restraint. Yet history would remember, for those who stood apart would one day rise above all others. While other dragon lords dwelled in towering palaces of black stone at the empire's heart, the Targaryens kept to a coastal estate on the western edge of Valyria. It was not modest by common measure, but compared to the grandeur of their rivals, it seemed humble. Waves crashed against the cliffs below, dragons nested in the caverns, and the family lived far from the rivalries that poisoned the freehold. Some mocked their isolation, others dismissed them as irrelevant. Yet it was in that solitude that the Targaryens preserved what mattered most, their bond with their dragons, their unity as a family, and a clarity of purpose undistracted by the games of empire. What others saw as weakness, destiny would reveal as strength. For when Valyria burned, this exile by choice became salvation. It was then that Daenerys, daughter of Lord Aegon Targaryen, dreamed a dream that would change the world. In her visions, she saw mountains split, towers crumble, and Valyria drowned in rivers of fire. She spoke of ash choking the sky, of dragons wailing in despair, of a city brought low by its own fury. Many laughed at her warnings, for Valyria had stood for 5,000 years, unconquered and eternal. But Aegon listened. Whether through wisdom, faith, or fear, he believed his daughter. He sold his estates, gathered his family, his retainers, and 5 dragons, and sailed west. The freehold called him a fool, blind to the power of prophecy. Yet when the doom came, history would remember him not as a coward, but as the father who saved his house. The journey was long and perilous. Across the narrow sea, storms lashed their sails, and waves threatened to swallow them whole. Yet above the ships, wings beat against the wind, guiding them onward. Dragons soared above the fleet, fire flickering in their throats, warding off fear and despair. To those who sailed, it was as though the gods themselves had sent omens of favor. For where men might falter, dragons endured. And so the Targaryens crossed the sea, leaving behind the mightiest city in history for an uncertain future. They abandoned glory, they abandoned empire, but in doing so, they preserved life. What seemed a flight of folly became the first step toward dominion. At last, the island of Dragonstone rose from the sea, an ancient volcanic isle, wreathed in smoke and shadow. Its cliffs jutted like black fangs from the waves, its towers shaped like the claws and wings of beasts. To some it seemed a fortress of nightmares, but to the Targaryens it was sanctuary. Here the family would build anew, their dragons nesting on fiery cliffs, their banners flying crimson and black against stormy skies. They had traded the heart of empire for a lonely island, yet within its black stone walls lay survival. And survival was all they needed. For in the years to come, survival would become conquest. On Dragonstone the Targaryens set their roots. For more than a century they lived there, apart from the squabbles of Westeros, apart from the fall of their kin. And when the doom came, it consumed every dragon lord but them. The freehold perished in fire and shadow, but the Targaryens endured, heirs to a legacy of fire and blood. In that moment, a single family became the last of their kind, the last dragon riders in the world. Their name, once overlooked, now carried the weight of destiny. For from this volcanic isle, they would one day rise to unite kingdoms, to forge a throne of swords, and to carve their place in history. The world had ended for Valyria. For House Targaryen, it had only just begun.